Lana Mercer had always been the unseen thread in the fabric of Mercer Designs. While the world adored her older sister Vivienne for her glamorous presence and bold public persona, Lana was the one who meticulously crafted the intricate designs that made their family's fashion house a global powerhouse. Their mother, Eleanor Mercer, the formidable owner of the company, had spent decades building the brand. Yet it was Vivienne who embodied its face, gracing magazine covers and sitting front row at Paris and Milan fashion weeks. Lana, in contrast, remained behind the scenes, toiling away in the design studios. Her contributions were overlooked. Her creativity was stifled by a system that only celebrated the showy, not the substance. It had always been this way. Vivienne was the golden child, the one their mother trusted. Lana, on the other hand, was the quiet workhorse who lived in her sister's shadow. Despite the favoritism, Lana had long accepted her role. She told herself that recognition didn't matter as long as she could do what she loved, designing pieces that would be worn by the world's elite. She had dedicated herself to Mercer Designs, pouring her soul into every collection, refining details, and ensuring the seamless execution of Vivienne's so-called vision. But now, standing on the brink of the biggest moment of the year, Fashion Week, Lana was beginning to question whether her sacrifices had ever been worth it. The Mercer family lived in a lavish penthouse in the heart of the city, a high-rising fortress of wealth and influence. Every room was adorned with exclusive designer furniture and custom artwork. Lana had grown up in a world where image was everything. Failure was unacceptable. Weakness was a flaw that couldn't be afforded. Yet, despite all the luxury, she had always felt like an outsider, a misfit in her own home. She longed for the day she could step out of the Mercer Empire's grasp and create something of her own, but she knew Eleanor would never allow it. As the final days leading up to Fashion Week approached, tension at Mercer Designs was at an all-time high. Lana had spent months working tirelessly on their upcoming collection, one that she had poured her heart into. It was her best work yet, and she felt a rare sense of pride in what she had created. The press was already buzzing about the debut. Industry insiders anticipated a groundbreaking showcase, but, as always, Vivienne would take center stage. She would accept all the praise and admiration, while Lana remained in the shadows. That night, in the sprawling, glass-walled dining room of the Mercer penthouse, Eleanor had gathered her daughters for dinner, a rare occurrence in their fast-paced lives. The conversation revolved around Fashion Week, the exclusive guest list, and Mercer Designs' continued dominance in the industry. Vivienne, as usual, basked in the attention. She effortlessly charmed their mother with her confidence and poise. Lana, however, could feel the growing ache of resentment gnawing at her. One day they'll see me, she thought. One day they'll realize I was always the one keeping this company alive. But what she didn't know was that before the night ended, her world would come crashing down. A sudden knock echoed through the penthouse, breaking the illusion of their perfect family dinner. A man in a suit, a legal representative, stood in the doorway, holding an official court notice with Lana's name on it. "Miss Mercer, you have been served," he announced. "This is in regard to multiple outstanding loans under your name, which are now in default. Immediate legal action is being pursued." The room fell silent. Lana's heart slammed against her chest. Loans? Default? Legal action? Her mind raced as her mother's cold gaze bore into her. Vivienne raised a perfectly arched eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Lana, what have you done?" Eleanor's voice was sharp, slicing through the air like a dagger. The legal documents were placed in Lana's trembling hands. The weight of the accusation settled over her like a suffocating shroud. The numbers didn't make sense. The accounts, the loans, they weren't hers. She had never taken out a single one. But as she looked up, she saw something chilling in Vivienne's eyes. A flicker of something that wasn't concern, but satisfaction. Lana had spent years being invisible. But now, she was about to be seen for all the wrong reasons. Lana sat frozen at the dining table, the thick legal documents heavy in her hands. The words blurred together as panic surged through her chest. Fraud, defaulted loans, immediate legal action. She read the accusations again, but they still made no sense. She had never applied for these loans. She had never spent the exorbitant amounts listed in the claims. Yet, according to the documents, she had taken out hundreds of thousands of dollars under her name, money that was now unaccounted for. Eleanor's piercing gaze bore into her. "Lana, explain yourself." Her tone was sharp, each syllable laced with disappointment and disgust. Across the table, Vivienne placed a delicate hand over her chest, her expression the perfect picture of concern. "This is shocking," Vivienne murmured, shaking her head. "I had no idea you were in trouble, Lana. Why didn't you come to us?" Lana snapped her gaze to her sister. There was something unnatural about Vivienne's tone, too smooth, too measured. Her stomach churned as she struggled to find words, her pulse hammering in her ears. "I didn't do this," Lana finally managed. "I don't know where these loans came from. Someone must have—" "Enough!" Eleanor's voice cut through her defense. "Don't lie to me, Lana. These documents don't forge themselves. The accounts, the signatures, they all match your name. Do you have any idea what kind of damage this could do to our company?" Lana opened her mouth to argue, but Eleanor wasn't finished. She threw down another set of documents, copies, of luxury purchases, extravagant trips, and designer goods. The receipts and invoices were all under Lana's name, a fortune spent that she had never seen, let alone owned. "I haven't touched any of this," Lana insisted, gripping the papers in disbelief. "I don't own a penthouse in Paris. I've never even bought a car that expensive. This isn't me, I swear." Vivienne exhaled dramatically. "Lana, please, just tell the truth. We're your family. We can help you, but you need to be honest." "Honest?" The word rang in Lana's ears like a cruel joke. She turned to Vivienne, searching her sister's face for any sign of sincerity, but all she saw was calculated performance. A sickening realization twisted inside her. Vivienne knew. No, Vivienne had done this. Lana's breath caught in her throat. The money, the sudden, unexplained wealth, the designer handbags, the expensive jewelry, all the things Vivienne had flaunted over the past year, which she had casually dismissed as the perks of being a fashion icon. It all made sense now. She had been using Lana's name to fund her lavish lifestyle. Lana's fists clenched around the papers. "It was you." Vivienne blinked, tilting her head. "Excuse me?" "You did this," Lana whispered, her voice shaking with anger. "You used my name. You took the money." The room fell eerily silent. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line as she observed the exchange between her daughters. Vivienne let out a short, breathy laugh. "That's ridiculous." She turned to Eleanor, eyes wide in mock disbelief. "Mom, do you hear this? She's actually trying to blame me for her mess." "I am not lying," Lana snapped, slamming the papers onto the table. "You've been flaunting your wealth for months, Vivienne. Where did all that money come from? Because it clearly wasn't from your own earnings." Vivienne's expression darkened, but she quickly masked it with a sympathetic sigh. "Lana, I know you're scared, but making wild accusations won't fix this. Just own up to it. You made bad financial decisions. It happens." Lana turned to Eleanor, desperate for her mother to see the truth. "Mom, please, you know me. I would never do something like this. You have to believe me." Eleanor's stare remained unreadable, her fingers drumming against the glass tabletop. She exhaled sharply before standing up. "I can't deal with this right now." She turned to Lana, her tone now devoid of any warmth. "Until you take responsibility for your actions, you are no longer part of this family." Lana felt the ground shift beneath her. "What?" "You heard me." Eleanor's voice was ice cold. "I will not have Mercer Designs entangled in a financial scandal because of your reckless decisions. You are to leave this house tonight." The finality in her mother's tone left no room for argument. Lana's chest tightened. This couldn't be real. She was being exiled for something she hadn't done. She turned back to Vivian, expecting to see guilt, but her sister simply lifted her wineglass to her lips, taking a slow, satisfied sip. Lana's hands trembled as she pushed herself up from the table. "This isn't over," she whispered, voice barely above a breath. Vivienne smirked. "Oh, sweet sister, it already is." That night Lana packed her belongings in silence. The lavish walls of the penthouse, once a place of comfort, now felt suffocating. Every item she put into her bag was a painful reminder of the life she was being forced to leave behind. As she stepped out into the night, the cold air biting against her skin, she realized something. Vivian had won this round, but Lana wasn't going down without a fight. Lana stepped off the bus into a city that wasn't hers. The air smelled of fresh rain and distant exhaust fumes, a sharp contrast to the designer perfumes and crisp linen that had once surrounded her. She adjusted the strap of her duffel bag, her only bag now, and exhaled slowly. The weight of the past few days pressed heavy on her chest. Disowned, accused, humiliated, she had spent her entire life building a future that had been stolen in a single night. There was no Mercer penthouse waiting for her anymore, no high-profile events, no design studios filled with sketches that bore her soul. She had nothing. And yet, as she stood on the unfamiliar sidewalk, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: possibility. For the first few weeks, survival became her priority. She rented a tiny, run-down studio apartment, barely big enough for a mattress and a makeshift desk. The peeling paint and flickering light bulbs were a far cry from the polished elegance she had once known, but it was hers. For the first time, she was in control of her life. The fashion world had slammed its doors in her face, and without connections or money, she had no choice but to start at the very bottom. She found work at a small boutique in a quieter part of town, a hidden gem tucked between cafes and antique stores. The owner, an older woman named Madeline, took a chance on her, hiring her as a seamstress and assistant. The pay was dismal and the hours were long, but for the first time in weeks, Lana felt useful again. Her hands moved instinctively over fabric, stitching, hemming, restoring worn-out dresses into something beautiful. The needle and thread grounded her, a reminder that she still had something to offer the world. That's where she met Ezra Hayes. Ezra wasn't like the business moguls and socialites she had grown up around. He was sharp-minded and perceptive, with a casual confidence that made it impossible to tell whether he was underestimating you or sizing you up. He wasn't a fashion designer, nor did he pretend to understand couture, but he had something just as valuable: a mind for business. He worked as a consultant, helping struggling businesses restructure and thrive. He had come to Madeline's boutique to revamp their marketing strategy, but when he noticed Lana working quietly in the back room, he lingered longer than necessary. "You work like someone who used to have more," he observed one evening, watching as she effortlessly transformed a tattered gown into something runway-worthy. Lana hesitated, then shrugged. "I work like someone who has nothing left to lose." Ezra smirked, leaning against the counter. "Then that makes you dangerous." She didn't understand what he meant until later, Over the following weeks, Ezra became more than a coworker. He became an unexpected ally. He noticed things others didn't. He saw how her hands hesitated whenever she counted money, the way she avoided answering questions about her past. He asked the right things, pushing her in ways that forced her to think beyond mere survival. One evening, after closing the boutique, Lana let it slip. "I didn't take those loans." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Someone framed me." Ezra didn't look surprised. He simply tilted his head and said, "Then let's prove it." At first, she dismissed the idea. She wasn't some detective. She had no resources, no allies, no way to fight back against Vivienne's deception. But Ezra was relentless. "Follow the money," he told her. "There's always a trail." And he was right. Together, they began digging, pulling whatever records Lana could access. Credit statements, old bank notices, emails, anything that might hold a clue. Ezra taught her how to trace financial patterns, to look for discrepancies, to spot forged signatures and suspicious transactions. One late night, as Lana sifted through the documents in her tiny apartment, a realization hit her like a freight train. The accounts Vivienne had set up in her name, the ones that had destroyed her life, were connected to business deals Vivienne had made months before. Vivienne's sudden wealth, the unexplained investments, the designer wardrobe she flaunted. It wasn't just fraud. It was a cover-up. Lana's grip tightened on the papers. Her heart pounded. Vivienne hadn't just stolen from her. She had built her entire empire off of Lana's name. And now it was time to take it back. Lana sat cross-legged on the floor of her tiny apartment, surrounded by stacks of papers, bank statements and scribbled notes. The dim glow of her desk lamp flickered slightly, casting long shadows over the mess in front of her. She had spent weeks gathering whatever documents she could, tracing the web of financial fraud that had been carefully designed to frame her. Every late-night shift at the boutique, every break spent poring over spreadsheets with Ezra, had led her to this moment. And now, as she connected the last pieces of the puzzle, she saw the truth staring back at her. Vivienne hadn't just taken out loans in Lana's name. She had orchestrated an entire financial illusion. The loans, the accounts, the fraudulent purchases, all of it had been done to prop up her failing business ventures. Vivienne had been funneling money into projects that had never taken off, funding her high-end wardrobe and extravagant trips under Lana's identity while keeping her own spotless. She had used Lana as her financial scapegoat, ensuring that when the house of cards collapsed, it wouldn't be her name on the legal documents. It would be Lana's. Lana's hands trembled as she flipped through the documents Ezra had helped her obtain. Bank transfers, property records, even receipts from luxury boutiques, they all pointed to Vivienne. One particular invoice caught her eye, a 6-figure payment to an exclusive Parisian couturière, one that Vivienne had publicly flaunted at an event just weeks before Lana was accused of fraud. The dates aligned perfectly. Vivienne had stolen her money and then worn her crime like a badge of honor. She clenched her jaw, anger burning through her. "She didn't just ruin my name," Lana muttered under her breath. "She stole my entire life." Ezra, seated across from her with his laptop open, let out a low whistle. "She's good," he admitted, scrolling through a list of Vivienne's financial activities. "I mean really good. She covered her tracks well. Better than most white-collar criminals I've seen." He clicked on a highlighted document, tilting the screen toward Lana. "But not good enough." Lana leaned forward. It was an internal email thread between Vivienne and a private investor discussing the need for an urgent influx of capital for one of her failing fashion ventures. The date? 2 weeks before the first fraudulent loan was taken out in Lana's name. Her stomach turned. There it was, the proof. "She planned this," Lana whispered, her voice tight. She knew exactly what she was doing. Ezra nodded. And she counted on you, never figuring it out. Lana inhaled sharply, staring at the evidence spread before her. For weeks, she had been drowning under the weight of false accusations, abandoned by the people she once called family. But now, she wasn't just a victim anymore. Now, she had something more powerful than anger. She had the truth. Vivian built her career on deception, Lana murmured, gripping the papers. She spent years taking credit for my designs, stealing my work, pushing me into the background, and now she's done the same with my finances. She's used me like I'm disposable. Ezra leaned back, watching her closely. So, what are you going to do about it? Lana lifted her gaze, and for the first time in weeks there was no fear left in her eyes, only determination. I'm going to take everything back, she said. Ezra smirked. Now that's the spirit. Lana turned back to the pile of documents, already mapping out her next move. Vivienne had built her empire by walking over her, by assuming Lana would always stay quiet, always take the fall. But that ended now. Because Lana wasn't just going to clear her name, she was going to bring Vivian's entire house of lies crashing down around her. Lana sat in the back room of the boutique, her hands gripping a steaming cup of coffee, her mind racing. For weeks she had been drowning under the weight of betrayal, but now she had something Vivienne never expected her to have. Proof. Cold, undeniable, documented proof. Every fraudulent transaction, every misused account, every high-end purchase Vivienne had made in her name, it was all there, meticulously gathered with Ezra's help. But having proof wasn't enough. If she wanted justice, she needed a plan. Ezra leaned against the counter, watching her closely. You could go straight to the police, he said, tapping his fingers against the surface. File a lawsuit, press charges. You've got more than enough evidence to bring her down. Lana shook her head, her jaw tightening. Vivian's too smart. She's spent her whole life getting ahead by talking her way out of things. If I go straight to the police, she'll spin it into some misunderstanding, maybe even pin some of it back on me. She'll drag out the legal process, use Mercer Design's influence to protect herself. Ezra nodded, considering. So, what's the move? Lana exhaled, placing the coffee cup down. I'm going to expose her, but not just anywhere. Her eyes flickered with a determination she hadn't felt in weeks. I'm going to do it at Fashion Week. Ezra raised an eyebrow. You want to humiliate her in front of the entire industry? She humiliated me first, Lana shot back. She destroyed my career, my reputation. She let our mother throw me out like garbage while she sat there watching. I'm not just going to fix my name, Ezra. I'm going to make sure she can't recover from this. Ezra smirked. Now, that's the kind of revenge I can get behind. Together, they began orchestrating the perfect takedown. Lana knew how the fashion world worked. Reputation was everything, and Vivian had spent years carefully crafting her image as an untouchable icon. If that image shattered in front of the right people, she wouldn't just lose credibility. She'd lose everything. Step 1. Secure an invitation to Fashion Week's biggest gala. With Mercer Designs controlling the guest list, there was no way Lana could simply walk in. But Ezra had contacts. High-powered investors who weren't too fond of Vivian's cutthroat tactics. A few well-placed favors, and soon enough, Lana had a ticket in her hand. Step 2. Gather the final, undeniable proof. Ezra helped her track down witnesses. Bank employees, tailors, even former assistants who had seen Vivian's reckless spending firsthand. They compiled digital and physical records, ensuring that when the moment came, no one could argue with the truth. Step 3. Plan the perfect moment. Fashion Week wasn't just about the runway. It was about the elite social events that followed, and Vivienne was set to receive an award at one of the most high-profile galas of the year. It would be her night to shine. Lana was going to turn it into her downfall. Sitting back in her chair, Lana felt a slow, determined smirk creep onto her face. Vivienne had never seen her as a threat. That was her first mistake. Her second, underestimating what Lana could do when she had nothing left to lose. The grand ballroom of the Celeste Hotel shimmered under an opulent cascade of chandeliers, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of conversation between the most powerful names in fashion. This was Vivienne Mercer's night. Dressed in a breathtaking custom gown, no doubt funded by the very fraud she had committed, she stood at the heart of the event, her signature smirk plastered across her face as cameras flashed. The industry elite toasted to her success, unaware that by the end of the night, she wouldn't be the golden child of fashion anymore. Lana moved through the crowd, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now that it was here, she wouldn't hesitate. Across the room, Ezra caught her eye, offering a subtle nod. Everything was in place. The evidence, the witnesses, the press. There would be no escaping this. The host stepped up to the podium, microphone in hand. "And now for the highlight of the evening," he announced, beaming. "The recipient of this year's Innovator of the Year award, a woman whose vision has defined modern luxury, Vivienne Mercer." A wave of applause rippled through the ballroom as Vivienne strode to the stage, radiating confidence. Lana clenched her jaw as she watched her sister bask in the attention. Vivienne thrived in moments like these, living for the admiration, the validation. She had stolen everything from Lana, her career, her name, her future, and now she was being rewarded for it. Not for much longer. Vivienne took the microphone, her voice smooth as silk. "This honor means so much to me," she began, casting an adoring smile toward Eleanor, who watched proudly from the front row. Mercer Designs has always stood for integrity, for pushing the boundaries of fashion while maintaining our values, and tonight, a loud beep interrupted her. The enormous LED screens behind her flickered, and suddenly, Vivienne's fraudulent transactions began to appear, line by line, on display for the entire audience to see. A murmur spread through the crowd. Bank statements, loan applications, forged signatures. Every damning piece of evidence Lana and Ezra had gathered scrawled across the screen. A financial autopsy of Vivienne's crimes. Vivienne's confident smile faltered. "What?" she stammered, spinning toward the screens. And then, Lana stepped forward. "Allow me to explain," Lana said, her voice clear and unwavering. She turned toward the audience, her eyes scanning the shocked expressions of designers, journalists, and investors. "Every single one of those transactions you're seeing, they were made under my name. The loans, the luxury purchases, the extravagant expenses, they were all stolen from me." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Lana walked onto the stage, standing beside her sister. "Vivienne Mercer," she said, voice cold, "committed identity theft and financial fraud. She took out loans in my name to cover her failing businesses. She used my credit to fund her lavish lifestyle, and she let me take the fall for it while she sat back and played the victim." "Lana, stop this right now," Vivienne hissed under her breath, gripping her arm. But Lana yanked herself free. "No," she snapped, "you don't get to silence me anymore." She turned to Eleanor, whose face had paled. "Mom, you threw me out of our home for this woman. You believed her over me. But here's the truth." She gestured toward the screens, where an image of a bank employee's signed statement appeared. Witnesses from these institutions have confirmed that it was Vivienne who walked into their offices. That's not my signature on those documents. It's hers. A voice from the crowd spoke up, one of the investors Vivian had recently partnered with. "Vivian, is this true?" She let out a breathy, nervous laugh. "Of course not. This is ridiculous." She turned to the audience, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "Lana is my sister, and I love her, but she's been unstable since everything happened. I tried to help her. I even suggested she get legal assistance." Lana held up her phone, pressing play. Vivienne's voice crackled through the speakers. "She humiliated me first. I'm not just going to fix my name, Ezra. I'm going to make sure she can't recover from this." Vivienne went rigid. The ballroom fell into stunned silence. Lana lowered her phone. "That's what you said when you thought no one was listening. You didn't want to help me, you wanted to ruin me." Vivienne's mask finally cracked. "You bitch," she spat, lunging toward Lana. Lana didn't flinch. She had already won. Security stepped in, pulling Vivienne back as murmurs erupted across the room. Journalists were already typing furiously, cameras flashing. Vivienne Mercer's career was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Lana turned to Eleanor, searching for any sign of remorse. Eleanor opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Vivienne, the daughter she had always believed in, the one she had trusted completely. And, for the first time, she saw the truth. Her expression hardened. She turned away. Vivienne's breath hitched. "Mom?" But Eleanor didn't respond. Vivienne's fate was sealed. Lana took a deep breath, stepping off the stage. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in her sister's shadow anymore. She had fought for herself, and she had won. The echoes of the gala still lingered in Lana's mind as she stood outside, the crisp night air cooling her flushed skin. The murmur of conversations, the gasps of disbelief, and the flicker of camera flashes had all blended together in a chaotic symphony. It was over. Vivienne had been publicly exposed, her carefully crafted empire collapsing in real time. The industry elite who once worshipped her now whispered behind raised glasses, distancing themselves from the scandal unraveling before their eyes. The name Vivienne Mercer was no longer synonymous with success, but with fraud. Lana exhaled slowly, her hands still trembling, though no longer with fear, but with relief. For the first time in weeks, the crushing weight of false accusations had lifted. The world finally knew the truth. She glanced at her phone, where a flood of messages awaited her. Journalists wanted statements. Former colleagues expressed their apologies. Even some of Mercer Design's biggest investors were now turning their attention to her, recognizing the real talent behind the brand. A familiar voice pulled her from her thoughts. Well, that was satisfying. Lana turned to see Ezra leaning against a nearby pillar, hands tucked into his pockets, a knowing smirk on his lips. "You handled that like a pro," he added. "I half expected you to throw a glass of champagne in her face for the grand finale." Lana let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "Trust me, I considered it." She paused, looking back at the glowing lights of the gala through the towering windows. Inside, Vivienne was nowhere to be seen. Security had escorted her out minutes after Eleanor turned her back on her. Eleanor. Lana's stomach twisted slightly at the thought of her mother. Even after everything, a small part of her had still hoped Eleanor would apologize, acknowledge the mistake she had made in trusting Vivienne over her. But the moment never came. Eleanor hadn't spoken a word to her since the confrontation. Maybe she was too proud. Maybe she was too ashamed. Either way, Lana knew she would never get the kind of validation she once craved. And maybe, for the first time, she was okay with that. "She won't recover from this," Ezra said after a beat, nodding toward the building. "Vivienne, her reputation's done. The sponsors, the investors, after tonight, they'll pull out. She'll be lucky if she ever gets another business deal again. Lana inhaled deeply. She should have felt victorious. She had won. But instead of gloating, she just felt free. I don't care what happens to her, Lana admitted, surprising herself with how true the words felt. I just wanted my life back. Ezra smiled. Well, now you have it. And he was right. For the first time in her life, she was free to carve her own path. No more being overshadowed. No more letting someone else dictate her future. Over the next few weeks, the fallout unfolded exactly as expected. Vivian faced multiple lawsuits from investors and brands who had unknowingly been involved in her fraudulent dealings. Mercer Designs took a severe financial hit, with its stock plummeting as clients distanced themselves from the scandal. Eleanor, desperate to salvage what was left, announced that Vivian was being removed from the company entirely. Lana didn't return to Mercer Designs. Instead, she started something of her own. With the momentum from the media exposure, she reconnected with contacts in the industry who now saw her as the true visionary behind the brand. Within months, she launched her own independent label, one that embodied everything she had always wanted her designs to be: authentic, innovative, and completely hers. The opening night of her debut collection was surreal. The event was intimate, the focus entirely on her work. There were no fraudulent speeches, no stolen credit, no deception, just Lana Mercer, stepping into the spotlight on her own terms. As she stood at the center of the room, taking in the applause, genuine applause meant for her, she knew one thing for certain. Vivian had spent her whole life believing that Lana was nothing without her. But now, the world knew the truth. Lana Mercer had never needed Vivian. It was Vivienne who had always needed her. The story of Lana Mercer teaches a powerful lesson about resilience, self-worth, and justice. Lana spent years in her sister's shadow, believing that hard work and loyalty would earn her recognition. Instead, she was betrayed by the very people she trusted the most. Her downfall wasn't the result of her own actions, but of someone else's greed and deception. Yet, rather than giving up, Lana chose to fight back. Not just for revenge, but to reclaim her identity, dignity, and future. One of the most important lessons in her journey is that truth always finds its way to the surface. No matter how elaborate the lie, deception is never sustainable. Those who manipulate and exploit others will eventually face the consequences of their actions. Lana's story also highlights the importance of believing in yourself, even when no one else does. She was abandoned by her family, cast aside by the industry, and left with nothing. But she proved that her talent and determination were enough to rebuild from the ground up. Ultimately, success is not about stealing the spotlight, it's about earning it. And when the truth prevails, those who truly deserve recognition will always shine.